Welcome to Weathered Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Hi there again, everybody, and welcome into yet another episode here of Weathered Questions, answering the questions that are on your radar. We do it in a simple and fun fashion, and we always encourage you to submit your questions through email at weatheredquestions@gmail.com. Hard to believe, Jan, that we're already into episode 10. Even harder to believe we are in the trenches of just about going back to school.
I know, it's crazy. The
Getting there.
Summer absolutely flew by. And part of that's been because we've been busy doing this podcast, and it is wild that we're already on episode 10. So yeah, super fun. We had a great summer. Not ready for it to be over. I don't know about you.
I'm ready for the kids to go back to school. It'd be nice. Yeah. It'd be very, very nice. And I think they're ready for that as well, though. They've had a pretty fun time at summer camp. And I'll tell you, this past July in parts of the Midwest were extremely wet. We had a lot of storms come through this past summer. And that kind of gets us into our very first question here on episode 10 of Weathered Questions. Sometimes we talk about questions that come to us from folks, and other times we discuss things that we just kind of have heard about, either from family or friends. And this is one of those that you just, have kind of heard about before. And it comes in, and here's the question. Can you actually count the seconds between thunder and lightning to tell how far a storm is? Jan?
Very common question. And maybe a slight confusion on this, because yes, you can count the seconds. However, there's one step that a lot of people miss. And so maybe you're not quite mathing the storm's distance correctly. So yes, you can count the seconds. Everyone knows how to do that, right? 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, however, whatever word you want to say, I guess, after your seconds to make it the right amount of seconds. I heard somebody here in central Iowa recently say 1 raccoon river, 2 raccoon river.
1 weathered question, 2 weathered question.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can do that too.
So you count, but the part that everybody tends to forget, or maybe not everybody, don't want to generalize too much. Many people forget you have to divide by 5. And so that can get a little tricky maybe if your numbers are funky, but you can get at least rough or fairly close, or use your smartphone in your pocket if you're not good at mental math. But there's a reason you have to divide by 5, right, Kai?
Yes, you definitely do. And the thing about it is, we're just going to keep this, again, very simple, because that's what we do here on Weathered Questions. So we're talking about miles generally. When you divide by 5, if you counted, Jan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you divide by 5, you get 1. So that lightning strike would be 1 mile away. And I think that's important to differentiate. It's not how far the storm is necessarily. It's how far that lightning strike was, or where that thunder sound wave started. So here's a fun fact for you. There are roughly 1,700 meters in a mile. The speed of sound, roughly, again, professors that are listening, you got to understand, we're rounding here, 340 meters per second. What's 340 times 5? 1,700. So there you go. Wherever that sound wave starts, at 340 meters per second, you're going all the way out. And after 5 seconds, you're at 1,700 meters, which is about a mile. So it's a rough calculation. It works pretty well. Sometimes you can also expand on this, where if you have a kind of a slow rolling thunder, it's like, okay, that was probably far away. If you're cooking in the kitchen, you see a massive flash, and then within like half a second, you hear a massive boom.
Big crack.
That thing was really close to you.
Yep.
And it's an uninterrupted, sharp, bam, sound wave that comes into your house. And then the rumble comes through and the pictures fall off. And it's just a whole nightmare. But yes, you can actually count that. You can actually figure that out. And that's the math behind it. It's about that simple.
Yeah. And the reason that we've heard that question so many times is because it is really a very simple thing, and something that's easy to do when you're, listening to a storm roll in. But very, very simple.
All right, what you're actually doing is timing the sound wave is all you're doing, because you figure that the lightning is going to, what happens is the air heats up big time because of that hot lightning bolt, and it cools rapidly and it comes back together, and therefore you get the thunderclap. And then all you're doing is timing out how fast that thunder is going to get to you. So it's kind of an indirect way to figure out how far that lightning strike was. It's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're curious about other lightning things, we've talked about lightning on several episodes. So head back to some of our past episodes and you'll get a little bit more detail on why lightning happens, or some people particularly liked the heat lightning episode, which leads us perfectly into our next question. We got this question from Donna in Ely, Iowa, and she writes, "Hi, Jan and Kai. Thanks for including information about heat lightning recently, and that she learned some things." She says her question for today is about dust devils. "I see them in the field in the summer times. What makes them form? Why are they so short-lived? How much wind do they have? And could you jump into one feasibly and get uplifted, similar to a tornado?" What do you got, Kai?
The good part to Donna's question is that part 4, can you jump into them and get uplifted? No, that's the good part. No, they're too weak for that.
Not strong.
You'd need a shower. If you got into one, you'd need a shower pretty quickly because you're probably covered in sweat. Why? Because it's probably a hot day. It's probably a hot day when you've seen this. They're the most common in the summer, but we see them in the fall too, if it's really dry and really warm. Mm-hmm. But the real science behind a dust devil, and if you're able and you're listening to us, maybe not while you're driving, don't do this, but take your right hand and stick your fingers, 4 of them out in front of you, and put your thumb straight up. And then curl your fingers back to you like that. And what happens is the air is going upward, it's going to start to turn in a counterclockwise fashion. In physics, we call that the right hand rule. Mm-hmm. And we had to go through that with all of our physics classes at Iowa State. But that's kind of the thing that's going on here is the air is heating the ground. And because it's typically dry and dusty ground, it can get extremely hot. And then you start to see the air lifting, and in some cases, it's a fairly rapid lift, and you can actually get a little bit of spin going on with these things. They're traditionally harmless. The worst that can happen is they, might lift a few plastic bags or something. But I have heard that these can get winds in excess of 50 for a very short time if you get directly under them. But again, they generally stay in fields. If they were to cross the road in front of you, I still don't think you're going to see, damage to a vehicle of any kind. Stuff like that's exceedingly rare, but we've seen them before traveling across the fields, and it's really just driven by the daytime heating and what we call the lapse rate in the atmosphere. How fast is that air going up? When it heats the ground, then that warm air is going to rise and be replaced. And as it does, it taps into a little bit of a different wind direction right off the ground, and all of a sudden you're spinning. But I can almost promise you, Donna, it's not like it's after, you probably haven't seen very many this summer. We'll put it that way because it hasn't been dry. It needs to
Correct.
Be dry to have dust. And the humidity generally needs to be very low to allow for those real nice thermals to go straight up like that. So
yep.
In short, they make for a great photograph, which I have yet to get a good picture of one. So if anybody's got one,
because they're so short-lived, right?
They are. You kind of got, it's one of those right place, right time kind of deals. And you could be in a passenger seat of a car and say, look at that. Reach down to your purse, grab your phone, and it's gone. And then your driver goes, what are you, nuts? What did you see out there? I swear there's a dust devil. No, it's gone now. I've seen that a couple times in Northeast Iowa when I've been out doing things, and it's real dry. So it does need to be dry, though. It needs to be dry, needs to be warm, usually low humidity, and there you go, Donna. Hopefully it helps you out.
Yeah, just everything, we talk about this all the time, right? Things in the atmosphere, sun heats the ground, heats the air above it. There's lots of things that are happening in the atmosphere, whether it's near the ground or higher up that we can't necessarily see. It just so happens with those dust devils that there is the right ingredients, that dry air, that, low humidity and the dust, that you can actually see that kind of spiral happening upward. And other times, maybe it's happening, but you can't necessarily observe it because it's not in that exact right place.
Yep. And in very rare cases, maybe it won't have much dust. Maybe you'll just see a couple of leaves swirling around. At that point, you definitely know it's going to be a harmless deal because it's not even enough to lift any dust. But, there's some type of little thermal, little whirl going on out there. But the science is still the exact same thing. And you're not going to see these in cities. It just doesn't happen. There's no dust there. You'll see other issues in cities like really hot pavement and thermals and things like that. That's outside of this question. But there we go. Maybe we'll see some in the fall because it's still pretty wet right now. Still pretty wet in Iowa right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from one farm field observance to another. We're going to lead into our trivia question for today, which actually takes us into a follow-up question that we'll get to in just a second. But maybe you've been around on social media and have heard this question asked about corn sweat. Maybe you've heard about that. Well, there is actually a scientific term for it. We'll talk about, what that is, why it happens here, and what it actually does in a second. But right now, we want to know for your trivia question today. This is going to be a write-in one, so no questions, Jeopardy style here. What is the scientific term for corn sweat? We'll give you a little bit of time to think about it.
My name's Bill. I've been a window expert at Hometown Restyling for 20 years. I love working in Eastern Iowa. These are neighborhoods I've known my whole life. I treat these homes like my own. I'm a craftsman. I want to know this job is installed correctly, that it measures up in every way. Trust your project with an expert like me. Hometown Restyling, your local residential remodeler. Visit hometownrestyling.com.
Today's trivia question.
All right, welcome back. So, have you heard about corn sweat? It's been all the rage to talk about it seems, at least on my social media here recently. So maybe that's just because my algorithm knows that I love weather, but who knows? We want to know though, what is the scientific name for corn sweat? Again, this was write-in answer today. No answer options. The official name that we would refer to it as meteorologists is evapotranspiration. Big word, but evapo starts, you've probably heard stuff, evaporation, okay? That's related to it. Evapotranspiration is what we're talking about for corn sweat. Essentially what's going on, corn's taking up water from the soil and letting it out into the air. It's evaporating out into the air, the extra moisture that it doesn't need to sustain the plant's life. Now, again, this gets a lot of attention because of the heat and humidity in Iowa. There is a little bit of truth to that, but not in maybe as much drama or dramatic way as it seems to be at times. But yeah, that's what corn sweat is.
It definitely affects the overall observations. It can do that definitely into the summertime months. And it's one of the reasons why we see these temperature trends the way we do, which kind of gets us into the next question as it is, which is, does corn really make the Midwest more humid in the summer? And it does. And here's the reason why, because temperatures and humidity is all taken at what's called a 2-meter elevation. Mm-hmm. Or about Kaj height, as I like to call it, about 6.5 feet up. That's the official height. Sometimes they're 5 feet. It depends on your sensor systems. But when you have what we call the boundary layer of the atmosphere, you're down, in that lowest 1,000 feet, lowest 2,000 feet, depending on your day.
The layer that's closest to the earth, where we are living and dealing with what's happening. It's
like the skin of an apple, basically. It's a very thin layer, but it's important because it's down where we are. And yes, it does kind of juice up that layer quite a bit, because an acre of healthy corn is going to give off, I hope I have the stat right, I believe it's 2,000 to 3,000 gallons of water in a healthy acre of corn. And some of these farm fields are hundreds of acres. And so you see a lot of this going on. Now, it's probably not going to be injected all the way up into the top of the atmosphere, right? But certainly down where we are and where our official temperatures are taken and where our official humidity readings are taken, down in that lowest 6 to 7 feet of the atmosphere, considering the corn stalks themselves are 6 to 8 feet. And the more water we have, the more you're going to see these things utilize the water as part of their life cycle, and it gets transpired up. And so the rare 80-degree dew point days have happened numerous times in the Midwest because of how wet it has been. And you'll probably have noticed, and I've certainly noticed it, I put something out there on social media about this. I didn't get ripped for it, but I had a couple of people kind of ask me sideways what I was really doing here. The number of 100-degree days are down over time. And it's just due to the simple fact that we plant so many crops in the Midwest right now. And a lot of our 100-degree days that are real big ones, you'll see it a lot in May when the crops aren't up yet. And sometimes you'll see them in late August or September when a lot of the transpiration processes start to slow down, or you'll see it in an epic drought. Those are kind of the three options. And so if you don't have an epic drought going on, by the way, that's a bad thing. It means the crop's in terrible shape and they're not transpiring like they should. And so then, yeah, you're in a big problem position. But compared to 100 years ago, we have a whole lot more corn now than we did then. So it absolutely has impacts. In fact, it's got so many impacts that with the driving of the humidity, we'll feel this well into the evening. And you'd think, well, we're supposed to hit our highs at 5 o'clock. Why are we still so uncomfortable at night? Well, the plants haven't stopped. They still go till 7 or 8 o'clock. And it is not uncommon to see dew points still up, way up, even at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night before sunset. So if you're out, having a family gathering going, God dang, like I am sweating everywhere. That's probably why, but you're not going to see that type of effect at 20,000 feet or something. You're going to see that right down in the boundary layer where we are. So there is some truth to that question. Corn absolutely makes a difference up here.
Yeah, and we can observe that in our weather stations that we have across the state, across the country. Those public weather stations, the ones that we know are perhaps in an airfield where it's mowed grass around it, are going to tend to have a lower dew point reading than one that is in a very close vicinity, but is right smack dab next to a cornfield. Those are the ones right next to a cornfield. We tend to see those actually have higher dew point readings. So yes, it absolutely does make somewhat of a difference, but it's also a pretty localized difference. It's not going to, make huge changes. It is going to make it feel a little warmer. It is going to make it feel a little bit more humid, but it's also not going to entirely change the entire weather pattern at the same time.
And that's a really good point, because I made the mistake, and I don't know why I did, but I've made this mistake before, and I should learn from my mistakes to not read comments online.
Yeah.
But I read some comments online, and now people are saying corn sweat is a scam because it got cooler. Well, no matter how many furnaces we run as human beings, you're not going to stop a late July or early August cold front. Which is not. That is such a large scale event. Compared to acres of corn on the ground, that's a minute amount. So yes, it's going to affect these lowest layers, but when you have a much large scale air mass coming in, you're going to offset that a little bit. I mean, maybe you don't have the crispy 45 to 50 dew points you'd like to have. Maybe it's 51 to 54. That's still pretty heavenly for getting towards the end of summertime. So the bottom line is large scale pattern changes absolutely can still affect that. But if you're stagnant and the air hasn't changed much, sure, it can totally affect your days. But it's the large scale stuff. So no, it's not a scam. Corn sweat is not a scam. It's a scientific process. Any agronomist knows this. Any meteorologist knows this. And so that's why summers can be pretty unbearable in agricultural areas, especially with corn. Folks that grow corn know all about this.
It's not the heat. It's the humidity.
It's the humidity. Greatest saying ever. Should be a t-shirt if it's not already.
Oh, I'm sure there's t-shirts about it.
Has to be.
If not, we'll make one.
Gosh. So, what does that get us into?
So let's wrap up here today, talking about, just talked about end of summer and how things fluctuate with corn. Why don't we talk about where we're headed moving forward, and the fact that, unfortunately, as it is August now, we're starting to lose daylight. Those days are getting shorter. Things are changing. We're headed towards fall, believe it or not, even though it doesn't really quite feel like it.
Yeah, we are. We're losing it on both sides of the day too. It's not like we're just losing it in the morning or losing it at night. We're losing it on both sides. And so as a result, our nights are longer. And that sounds like a very common sense way to approach this. We can still get really high heat waves, still strong heat. We can still get 100-degree weather into September if the conditions allow for it. That's thanks to the warmer ground, which we talked about a couple episodes ago. But one of the fun facts about this time of year that I did not know probably until 4 or 5 years ago, because I would always work the morning side of the day. And I'll be darned if that last 2 weeks of August, when kids are going back to school, we'd be running fog delays on the bottom part of your screen. And I'm going, man, like there's a lot of fog right now. Like, why is there so much fog? So through a series of National Weather Service workshops and just by doing some research, August in parts of the Midwest is the second foggiest month of the year. And it's because we still have so much humidity from leftover crops and that are in the process of generally maturing. They're in the mature phase.
Yeah, they're still getting mature or just starting to dry out. Yep.
But we have a whole extra hour now or hour and a half at night to cool down. So as a result, you get down to the dew point much faster this time of year, and your winds tend to be lighter. So those are two big factors in fog formation, which I don't think we've actually done that question on this program yet, but that's two of them, is high humidity and low wind. And so as a result, you can get some nasty, especially valley fog this time of year where the cool air settles in. And you'll notice in August, you can get some cold fronts that drop you down to the 40s and 50s at night. And if there's no wind with those, that's when you get the river steam going on, valley fog going on. So I always found that to be an interesting stat that those, if you're going to have problems going back to school, sometimes it's heat related, but sometimes it's fog related too. And that's strictly due to the leftover humidity and the loss of daylight, which we're noticing all over the neighborhood, right now. Can't play as late.
You can't. You gotta come home, Kai, go to bed.
I know.
Get ready for school.
I know it. But the other part too, so we have a dog in the family now. We replaced our old pup, and this new pup
is adorable.
Hates dew. He hates dew. Yes. So I decided to go out there and I dropped the mower on the lowest possible setting, and I gave him like a fairway green kind of cut in the yard.
Pampered.
He's still a snob about it. And the problem is this time of year, and you may have noticed it last couple weeks, there's a lot of dew out there. And it comes with the same thing. Longer nights, less wind. When's the last time we had a windy day, Jan?
It really has not been very windy at all.
Outside of a storm, right? You don't have much wind this time of year. And so, you get a lot of water on the grass. And so, Mr. Snob out there is lifting his feet up. Doesn't want to go to the bathroom, so I got to drop him down into other places and buzz the yard real short for him because he's real tiny. So,
personal anecdote of how dewy it has been recently.
Yes.
I recently was helping crew for anyone in Iowa has probably heard about the Hot Air Balloon Classic, the National Balloon Classic.
Oh yeah.
I helped crew for a friend recently, and they fly very early in the morning, late at night. Their flight meetings are 6 a.m. and then they head out after that, which means that it's dark when you're starting and you're climbing through grass and prairie that is very saturated. So by the end of collecting the balloon and the basket and everything, we were all just absolutely soaked. Like walking into the field we walked into, it was pretty much like you were just walking into a swimming pool. It was just...
How far was the walk? How far was the walk in the field?
Too long.
Okay. I mean, sometimes, were you worried about blisters on your feet or anything?
Oh,
like
no.
with socks and shoes and stuff? And
well, no, it wasn't
getting
that
just
long.
soaked like that?
And
Okay.
I mean, you're not like running. You're just casually, slowly walking with a giant hot air balloon. But yes, very dewy. Grass collects it very well and can confirm that there is a lot of dew right now. And it just, it's just based on timing of everything. And kind of circling back to your comment earlier about the sun angle and where we're losing daylight. Some people may not necessarily realize, as it is still very warm in August, this time of year, we're equivalent to about April. By September, we're equivalent to March for our sun angle. So it's wild how quickly, we start losing it. Like if you think about right now as essentially early April for how much sun we're getting, that just shows how much daylight we're losing and how quickly it's going to start cooling down.
Yep. And then the other part about this too that I noticed both in March and I noticed it around September, so we're getting close to it. Think about your morning drive to work. Think about your evening drive probably won't be an issue for a long time. At least we'd hope so, unless you got to work overtime. But when you're going into work, that 7 to 8 a.m. hour, that sun angle is going to be right in your face.
It's the worst.
That's one of the toughest times of year. And we actually, I have seen at the TV station multiple times when I was there that during those times you see crashes where I think
accidents.
the sun is just in their face and you can't see what's going on and things happen. So you do want to be aware of that. September, late August, right at that time of day, stay alert, have your sunglasses, have your visor, be ready because it could be staring right at you on your way into school and work. And nothing's tougher than trying to drive against the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. Changes are coming, and hey, we're here to talk about them. We'll start getting into winter and fall conversations here before too long. So if you have related questions about those topics or anything we've discussed, or maybe perhaps haven't yet discussed that you'd like us to explain and help you understand better, we welcome you to write those questions in weatheredquestions@gmail.com. Again, that's weather with an ED, questions@gmail.com. Join the conversation. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what you think about the show. Tell someone else about the show. Write us a review. Whatever it is that helps you connect to us. We would love to hear your feedback and hear your questions. So thank you for listening. Until next week, stay safe.